gentlemen, please welcome Frankie Boyle!
Hello and welcome to New World Order. Sergei Skripal has been released from hospital, the victim of the Salisbury poisoning. Salisbury poisoning to me always sounds a bit like a guest ale. He's not even dead! He's not even dead. There are people coming back from a week in Faliraki who feel worse than this guy. Now, we don't know what happened. What do we know about international espionage? But the Russians floated their idea. They said maybe Britain did this themselves to distract from Brexit. I don't know about you, but an old guy not quite dying on a park bench, that's got British workmanship written all over it. If Britain are trying to distract from Brexit, things are going really well. MI5 must be sitting there going, well, this is brilliant. We've got the World Cup after this, then it's Wimbledon fortnight. Prince Philip won't have to die till the autumn. Then it's Ant McPartland's murder-suicide taking us all the way to the finish line. Poor old Ant, poor old Ant. There is a silver lining. We now know which one is Ant. Yeah, see that one that isn't wrapped around a lamppost? That's Deck. So what was Russia's punishment for all this? Russia's punishment is that no members of the royal family will go to the World Cup in Russia, a country whose views on royal families is at best ambivalent. We had the royal wedding, the pastor went on a bit. They must have wished that it was just back in the day when they could just execute someone like that. But they haven't been able to do anything like that for over 20 years now. The death toll rose from the protests in Gaza. Over 100 people have been shot dead. Thousands more have been shot and wounded. But to be fair, there were injuries on both sides. One of the Israeli snipers got an erection for so long that his foot went to sleep. Things are bad in Gaza. Things are so bad in Gaza that porn stars have started referring to their pubic arrangement as a Gaza Strip. An area that's been so brutally pummeled that no child could ever hope to crawl out alive. So why is it important to talk about this? It's important to talk about this in Britain because Britain still provides moral and practical support to Israel while Israel breaks international law. And I don't think... Thank you. I don't think British people would be OK with that if they knew the full facts of the case, if they knew the full extent of Britain's hypocrisy on the world stage. Britain sells weapons to Saudi Arabia that Saudi Arabia uses to kill people in Yemen. Yet Britain is the #2 provider of aid to Yemen. And why not? Life gives you Yemen, you give Yemen aid. Britain needs to understand its own history. Theresa May this week told the Irish Prime Minister to cheer up about the prospect of a hard border. Does she know what Britain did in Ireland? To me, Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland are like two halves of one bipolar personality. Yes, get the jolly old fiddle out and stick it through some fucker's head. One of their proposed solutions is that instead of having a hard border, what they're going to do is have a customs check, pull lorries over on the border. That's going to be an interesting job. Pulling over lorries on the border in Armagh. Bit of danger money involved there. That'll be the best paid customs and excise job in the history of the world. People will be retiring from Premiership football to do that job. Look out, I think we're being pulled over by Raheem Sterling. Joining me tonight to discuss this week's big topics are Sarah Pascoe, Catherine Ryan and data journalist Mona Chalabi. Hello.
Hello.
Have you had a good week?
I don't know about a good week, but a statistic caught my eye that humans represent 0.01% of all living things, and yet we have managed to destroy 83% of all wild mammals.
Get in.
I know.
In your face, Sharks. Do you think we could kill more next year?
Why not? Why not? We've only got through 50% of all plants, so there's loads more to destroy, yeah.
Vegans are doing their best.
Didn't you tell me that a carrot can scream?
I didn't tell you that.
I think you really told me that if you boil a carrot, it screams.
I didn't tell you that.
So, first up, Britain is entering a golden age of racism. There's this idea that lots of people who voted for Brexit are stupid. They're not stupid. They're just people who want to put an end to immigration from Europe because they don't like Pakistanis. Nobody admits to being racist anymore. People used to be proud of it in the 80s. Now everyone's like, nah, it's not racist. It's just a Union Jack tablecloth for a street party to which we forgot to invite the Patels. Amber Rudd had to resign after the Windrush scandal. Personally, I don't think that she should have resigned. I think she should have been deported. Joining us to discuss all this, please welcome rapper, poet and author Akala. How you doing, man?
Yeah, it feels like Groundhog Day.
Yeah, we did an interview last week.
We did. I meant last time I came on your show. But
All right. Okay.
it's all good, but we did it. It was good fun.
So, what do you make of the whole Windrush scandal?
It's not a hugely new issue for migrants from the Caribbean. So it's really fascinating, but I think it does give us an opportunity to look at historical context of how Windrush was received at the time. Like when the actual boat came, the government at the time, which was Attlee's government, called the literal passengers on the Windrush an incursion and said that, you know, steps needed to be taken to identify the ringleaders so that no further incursions were encouraged. These were British citizens, paid for themselves, in many cases war veterans.
I found it amazing, like, how little British people knew about the history of the thing. So they didn't fully appreciate that these people came as British citizens, many of them expecting a kind of hero's welcome. Some people were war heroes, and they're coming to be welcomed by the homeland, and they receive this.
It's hard to overstate the degree to which our grandparents genuinely believe themselves to be British. If you've been to any kind of Windrush generation home, you'll see Queen Elizabeth and White Jesus. Those are the two kind of people on the wall. Yeah. That's not a stereotype. And so they really believed they were coming to the mother country, and that they had no... Remember, what's missed in a lot of this is Caribbean societies are multi-ethnic, multicultural societies. So they expected to be treated as citizens as they saw themselves, but they were not. And sort of the legacies of that are very much still alive and made this possible, but not inevitable. And the public's reaction is interesting and revealing at the same time. I think that the state that very much underestimated the kind of level of reaction there would be against it. But I do, at the same time, think there is a sort of good immigrant, bad immigrant thing going on where we've got the points this week, but, you know, it'll be...
Absolutely. I mean, people saying, of course, we all want to crack down on illegal migrants. And you're like, do we? Well, I've no empathy for people because they don't have the paperwork. I mean, is that who we want to be?
I think it's quite interesting that actually in polling it shows that more people blame May for this than Amber Rudd. So about a third of the people polled because she was Home Secretary at the time, right? So ultimately I think a lot of people feel that the buck has to stop with her. Yeah.
I think this is one of the great contradictions of Britain as a society, is that you have, ironically, a society that is one of the probably the most successful multi-ethnic polities in the world. You walk down any major city in Britain, no one's going to blink at really anymore at seeing people that quote-unquote look different. So you have real big successes and then massive state institutional failures. And I think, again, in this particular instance, the state misread the temperature of the public. If this had been the Somali community or the Congolese community or the Nigerian community, they haven't become the model minority in the way that, say, British Indians have been for a while now. But I'm old enough to remember, I grew up in the 90s, so I grew up in the period where British Indians were not the model minority. It was, we like you, Caribbeans, you're all right, it's just them lot we don't like.
There was a sense of these people have earned the right to
be
call themselves British.
They've put up with everything and they've gone through it all.
Part of the reason why I think the public reacted differently is just a question of age, right? There was evidence that these people had contributed to society, whereas with immigrants that are here now, it's still hypothetical. It's hypothetical of, oh, maybe we'll just claim benefits or whatever. But we haven't learned from history to see just how much immigrants have continuously contributed.
Yeah. But I never have any problem as an immigrant. When I wear a tracksuit and listen to drill music, people assume I'm from Chatham. I'm so privileged. I've never faced any of it. And I'm just as much a Commonwealth immigrant.
But it is, for some Eastern European countries, there's white people who also do experience a kind of racism. It isn't simple as just being white.
They're the other white, they're the Irish of
Yes.
now. So when I grew up, it was the Irish. They were the whites who were not quite white. The Irish and the Caribbean community were very, very close for exactly that reason. It will be the Romanians or the Polish now who are sort of the unwelcome European group.
So, the Windrush scandal saw the Windrush generation being denied healthcare benefits and being threatened with deportation despite being British citizens. The government must have been aware that what they were doing would have very serious implications. Here's how someone from the normally very guarded British civil service described the minister's concerns.
Is your recollection that this was a kind of controversial policy? And people saying, this is a really challenging policy, Home Secretary?
I think it was not just a question of the Home Secretary being told it was a challenging policy. The Prime Minister was as well, and this was a very contested piece of legislation across government departments. Now, I can't say, and shouldn't say, as the former head of the Civil Service, precisely who gave what advice to whom, but what I can tell you, it was highly contested. And there were some who saw it, I shan't name them, as almost reminiscent of Nazi Germany in the way it's working.
It's like, those are the most guarded people. And he's come out and said, look, people knew that was wrong. I honestly think, like, the political class were projecting their own racism onto the public, and didn't realise that their racism is bigger than the public.
Of course. You know, the contempt that British ruling classes and European ruling classes had for their own peasantry was the contempt that was exported to the colonies and that have sort of returned. So it's very much the racism of the ruling class is much more important, much more powerful, and is the driving force. If they wanted to delegitimise these things, it would be very, very easy to do so. If they wanted to teach children in schools, for example, the history of the British Empire, people said, well, actually, this amount of wealth is what was extracted from India. More Indians fought in World War II than New Zealand, Canada and Australia combined. This is how much wealth has been extracted from the Caribbean. These people are legally British citizens, etc., etc., etc. The whole history and sense of British citizenship might have been very, very different. But that isn't what was done. It was sort of left to neglect, and then the state said, oh, look, ignorant, racist guy down the pub, it's his fault. That's why we've got to change immigration legislation. We don't care what he thinks about anything else, and we ignore him on every other subject, but on this one, we're going to listen to him.
Absolutely. Now, Windrush shows us that ethnic minorities in Britain are treated differently by the institutions designed to protect and serve them. Here's dashcam footage uploaded to YouTube by a London DJ capturing the moment a police officer bluntly explains the nature of profiling.
This is racist, it's that. Predominantly, the criminal profile people are doing are black people. So, naturally, if you see a car full of black lads and they may be dressing gangster style clothing or whatever, and they're driving down there, they're getting stopped.
He was still cleared by the IPCC. They said that he wasn't being intentionally discriminatory. What does that even mean? Like, being able to differentiate? I know, it's just insane. And the other thing that's really interesting is he said something about gangster clothing, right? Yeah. And the problem is that something becomes gangster as soon as it's on a black person immediately, right? The guy was in a bobble hat. Doesn't get less gangster. My mom's a gangster then.
I mean, I think the last time I got pulled over was about 6 months ago. And the police said, you know, gang members drive cars like this. And I was like, well, clearly it's not the car, you know, because company directors also drive cars like this.
And just those statistics on stop and search, we know that in Britain, black people are 8 times more likely to be stopped than a white person, and other ethnic minorities are 4 times more likely than a white person to be stopped and searched.
But the thing is, a lot of black people now believe this stuff, this narrative, and that shows that if you repeat something enough, you can convince anybody. And what we find when we bother to look, you know, the people who promote the kind of black-on-black violence narrative never have to explain why black Premier League footballers don't kill anyone, why black doctors don't kill anyone, why black university graduates hardly kill anyone, why old black people hardly kill anyone. They don't have to explain, in fact, why violent crime among black communities is concentrated in precisely the same demographic as it's concentrated among mine and your Glaswegian cousins. And so by obscuring the problem, pretending, you know, it's excessive melanin syndrome, we end up with ridiculous situation.
Statistically, when you control for all of those other factors, like wealth, like educational attainment, they find that race and ethnicity has basically is completely irrelevant. And it's the oldest statistical rule, right? Correlation is not causation. Like, just because black individuals might be more likely to commit crimes, it is not because of their blackness, it's because of these other intervening variables.
What's been characterised as a rise in violent crime has produced various different explanations. Here's David Lammy passionately explaining to the BBC what he believes could be the problem.
It feels like neighbourhood policing has vanished. It's not around you. We haven't seen a police while I've been here, and I've been here for a little while now.
To be fair, I think the cop's just there because he's seen a black bloke with a camera.
So the decline in policing has happened at the same time that there has been this increase, but we've also seen that in lots of forces where there's been a decline in policing, there hasn't necessarily been a subsequent rise in crime. So it's not just that. That isn't the only explanation.
Well, it must be a rise in inequality as well.
Exactly. Funds have been cut to all kinds of programmes that have been designed to try and prevent this kind of violence. Like, that is obviously a massively contributing factor too.
But something that never comes up here, I mean, across the last generation, the British prison population has grown by 82%. We have by far the largest prison population in the whole of Western Europe. And guess what? Roll the drums, everyone. If your parents are in prison, you're more likely to go to prison.
Yeah. So, gang culture affects the whole of the UK. Here's an eye-opening BBC interview with two locals explaining the complex nature of gang culture in Glasgow.
Matthew McAllister, 16, and Dennis Scott, 19, live in Glasgow's East End. They also know all about the gangs.
Den Toy, Baltoy, Provi, Drummy, Agro, Skinheads, Torn.
It's Torn and Skinheads that hate each other the most. Some of them can get slashed, some can get stabbed, or else you can get chopped with a sword. Somebody shouting at the bus, "Ya fanny."
Did we really need subtitles there? Yeah. Just me understood that. Someone shouting "fanny" from a bus is the most Glaswegian thing. Like, swearing is a different thing in Scotland. In Scotland, the word fucking is just a warning that a noun is on its way. But there's a big culture there of, like, you know, there's all different kinds of blades. There's steakies. There's, like, one time I was going in to do a gig and Rangers were, like, one up, I think in Europe, and I did the gig and I came out and I saw a guy shouting at another guy, "Do you want me to go and get a sword?" And I knew from that they'd conceded a late equaliser.
I think this piece gets to the heart of the problem, though. The kind of black-on-black London-centric narrative demonising all black people for crimes that they have no part in. But it actually ignores working-class white kids in places like that up and down the country. So if I were one of those kids or a white kid living in Croxteth, I'd be like, how come the whole country only cares about black boys in London when the same stuff is happening in my neighbourhood? So it's another great way of the state and the right-wing press playing class against race.
Well, some of those names that he mentions there, Toy and stuff like that, they're like ancient gang names in Scotland.
Yeah.
You know?
The City of Gangs by Andrew Davies. It traces the gangs in Glasgow over 150 years. And what's revealing is, obviously, not only is the whiteness of the young men offered as an explanatory factor, it's not even mentioned at all, because it's irrelevant.
How long is that Andrew Davies book? Because the last time you were here, you recommended The Making of the English Working Class, and that was like Bible thickness.
Yes. I didn't even remember doing that.
I just finished it. Are there any magazines you like?
Well, it's been fascinating. Thanks very much. Akala.
Thank you. Thank you.
Our next motion, Donald Trump will be the world's first crowd-funded assassination. Donald Trump, an anthropomorphised kneecap peeking out from under a marmalade croupier's visor, With the diet of a pub bin, more personal issues than Batman, and the muscle tone of a coma patient. I suppose the only thing that has stopped him from being assassinated is the suspicion that he could take several bullets to the head and keep talking. I often wonder how he has sex, because clearly Melania doesn't touch him. So, like, what happens? I reckon once a day they send in a guy whose job it is to collect sperm from a panda, and he tricks him into mounting a set of fiberglass buttocks covered in his daughter's perfume. Joining us to discuss all things Trump, please welcome comedian Ahir Shah. Welcome aboard, Ahir.
Thank you for having me.
Are you following Trump and his madness?
Upsettingly, yes. I'd managed to avoid him for quite a while. Like, I used to have direct alerts on my phone every time he tweeted, and then after about 3 days realised that that was the least productive form of self-harm I've ever engaged in. It was just weird having, like, a computer in your pocket that tells you every time there's a catastrophe you can do nothing to stop or help.
And does he worry you?
No, obviously it worries me. We're all going to die, man.
Do you really think we're going to die?
Between the threat of nuclear annihilation, climate change, and antibiotic-resistant microbes and everything, it's like we're juggling apocalypses. And I do wonder how long you can keep doing that before you have to go, look, Mum, no hands.
The trouble with this whole having him assassinated, or if he was assassinated, is that he would be remembered as a martyr and a hero.
Oh.
That's the flaw in this plan.
They'd make a statue.
Of course.
And he'd have a six-pack and an 11-inch cock.
Yeah, I worry that if you were to crowdfund this, there would be an alternative crowdfunding campaign, which is to protect him, which could theoretically raise just as much money. The thing that is actually remarkable is that over the past year, his popularity really hasn't changed that much. And that's because he's kind of delivering a lot of the things that he pledged he would do during the campaigns.
Now, no one could deny that Trump is a master at creating distractions that subvert even the most basic public engagements. Here he is, turning traditional news coverage on its head with this uniquely staged address.
You see what's happening, and you see what's happening with funding. The funding of our military was so important, and so many military people are with us today. So just think of $700 billion, because that's all going into our military this year. And now I'm going to come down, and we're going to watch this roll.
I love that they could only give the rabbit one expression no matter what Trump said, and they went with what the fuck.
This is our fault. Because as entertainers, we haven't entertained the people enough, so they're looking for entertainment from politicians.
Yeah. I hear you.
And you want people doing what their vocation is. Politicians need to be doing politics. You don't want crossover, like when my obstetrician told me he was also a DJ.
I also think it's partly the fault of journalists, because we covered him so much during the election, which is exactly what he wanted. Almost 15,000 headlines were written about him during the campaign, and Clinton got half of that.
He's the thing that everyone wants to click on, he's the thing that everyone wants to watch, and that is what drives the profits and revenue for the media in its myriad dying forms.
You say, I don't want to hear about it, or I want to hear positive news stories, but you click on, oh, did she look fat in that?
Maybe we need to create articles that are, does the Syrian child dying look fat in this?
Yeah. Mona.
This is the kind of sick humour we can't tolerate on this show. Trump may love the attention, but he's often just disguising the fact that he doesn't really know what he's meant to be doing, as we can see here.
You know, this was going to be my remarks. It would have taken about 2 minutes, but that would have been a little boring. A little boring. Now I'm reading off the first paragraph. I said, this is boring. Come on, we have to say, tell it like it is, that we have to get Republicans in office. And I think with that, maybe, Shelley, I'll let you start off, and you can, we can go around, and I'd like to have Jim say a few words, and we'll go around the horn.
I have literally no idea what he had to say.
Shelley, Jim, you say something. You haven't thrown your notes away.
He's become perfect for the world that we live in through the inventive medium of losing his fucking mind. Earlier this afternoon, I got a text on a group WhatsApp a friend said, surely this is the thing that's going to get him. And another friend said, yeah, this must be. I was like, oh, are you talking about the Saudi thing and the Gulf states and the funding? And the second person said, oh, no, I was talking about the investigation into his political enemies. And the original guy said, oh, no, I was talking about the money from the Ukrainian politician that went to his lawyer and fixer. And they were like, that's 3 things this afternoon.
He's trying to dismantle every single thing Obama did. Remember, he had the mic drop, and Trump's like, I'll show him. Throw an A4 piece of paper. Not as good.
But you do get... like, you know, everything that Trump has accused Obama of doing, it ends up that Trump actually does it. Basically, my theory is that this all ends when we discover that Donald Trump was born in Kenya.
Golf is a good example of that. So when Obama was in office, he was criticising him, saying he's playing too much golf. And during his first 99 days in office, Trump played 19 days of golf and Obama played 1.
He probably has a bunch of people who just tell him he got a hole-in-one. He probably doesn't even use a club. Hole-in-one! Trump's health has been the subject of much debate, with his love of burgers, KFC and Diet Coke leading many to wonder how he's even alive. Trump's personal doctor, Harold Bornstein, that's this guy. Bornstein recently revealed that he didn't compose a 2015 letter declaring the then presidential candidate's health as astonishingly excellent, and that Trump was unequivocally the healthiest individual ever elected to the presidency.
I mean, when you consider someone like Theodore Roosevelt, for example, when he was running for president for the Progressive Party, at the beginning of a speech, he was shot in the chest, said, I don't know if you know this, but I've just been shot, and it takes more than that to kill a bull moose, and then continued speaking for 84 minutes before seeking medical assistance. I think he's probably healthier than Trump.
Trump even acts weirdly around the many world leaders he's forced to meet. Last month, Trump met with President Macron. Having previously been given the cold shoulder by the French leader, Trump couldn't resist showing what great pals they are now.
We do have a very special relationship. In fact, I'll get that little piece of dandruff for... We have to make him perfect. He is perfect. So it is really great to be with you, and you are a special friend. Thank you.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
It's an honor to call you my friend. Thank you.
I just love that what people worried about after he got elected was that he would be normalised. You know, this is never getting normal. He's got the President of France in a fucking headlock. Like, world leaders, before they come there, must have to, like, role-play with clowns.
Watching the clip, and I don't really understand how men work, but is that
It's really the same.
No, because women don't have a hierarchical...
Oh, I see. No, it is. I think.
Yeah,
you're absolutely right. Because 2 equals shake hands. Hi, Catherine.
Hi.
Yeah, and then men who are trying to be powerful, like, yeah, and then I put my hand on you, like, I'm into... No, because I'm... Yes, hi, everyone.
She's going to be great on the show. She's going to be the best.
She's got dandruff.
I think when he comes over, what we should do is, in his honour, just relax our gun laws for 24 hours. Just go, yeah, Don, there's no gun laws, just for you, and we're giving you a magnetic hat.
But Trump will not be assassinated. It would be very difficult. He's not smart enough to go to the theater. And also, Democrats would never assassinate him because then they'll have to admit that guns can be useful.
At this point, if a crazy person manages to infiltrate and kill the president, who replaces him? The world doesn't suddenly get better. He's not really one man. It's a group of people and a system, and it will be replaced by something maybe worse.
And that group of people are the ones who will crowdfund.
Whoa.
So, in conclusion, there's every chance that America's elected Donald Trump because subconsciously they all want to die. But Trump himself is hovering in perfect balance on the edge of life and death. His blood sugar is so high, Jamie Oliver has called for it to be taxed. But his blood pressure is perfectly normal for an orgasming walrus. Every time he wants an erection, he has to wait until the pressure from his lung cancer forces the cholesterol plug from his heart to his penis. He's the first person in history to have cured dementia with syphilis. And yet he refuses to die. In the same way, he will refuse to allow the Americans who voted for him the oblivion they subconsciously desire. They're in purgatory, like someone who decides to end it all by jumping in front of the Eurostar and ends up paralysed in Ashford, Kent. Well, that's the end of the show. Thanks to my guests, Sarah Pascoe, Catherine Ryan, Mona Chalabi, Akala and Ahir Shah.